What's up? Incredible, loved, and valued people. I am so thankful that you're here. Welcome to the Compelled podcast. I'm your host, Mae McDaniel, and it is always a joy to talk to you. I am just always blown away with this gift that we get to come together in this really cool way. And friend, I just want to encourage you today that the Lord is constant. He is unchanging. I know that there can be moments, days, seasons where there is so much fluctuating from our emotions to our circumstance, continual change, good and bad, easy and hard, exciting and anxiety ridden. And I just want to encourage you in that space of constant changing in our world that is constantly changing in your day, that Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That he is constant, that he is steady, that you can rely on him. And as you rely on him in the constant changing, in the constant fluctuating, you can remain steady too because of who you're leaning on, because of who you're relying on. I'm so thankful. Aren't you so thankful for the steadfastness of God, for the unchanging nature of our God? I'm so grateful. Friends, I'm so excited about our time today. We are hanging out in 2 Peter, and I just want to encourage you, whenever you have a pocket of time later today or later in your week, go read 2 Peter, the whole book. It's just 3 chapters, but it is so good, and we are only hanging out in a couple of verses today. So when you have time, go just marinate in it because it is so life-giving. But we are in 2 Peter, starting in verse 5. This is, and also just a little bit of context, this is the same Peter who was a disciple of Jesus, who was standing in the boat with James and John, and Jesus says, "Come and follow me." He drops his net. Like, this is the same Peter who denied Jesus 3 times. And then on the beach in Galilee, Jesus said, "Do you love me?" And Peter said, "Yes." And Jesus so graciously redeemed something so difficult and something so shameful. He said, "There's no condemnation for you who are in me. Now go feed my sheep. I have a better story for you, a bigger story for you to be a part of." That's this Peter. And in 2 Peter, he's at the end of his life. We're not going to read this part of the letter today, but he actually tells them, I know that the end is near. I know that my time is concluding. And he is writing to the believers. And so that's the Peter that we're talking about. In verse 5 of chapter 1, he says, in view of all of this, pause. In view of all of what? We got to know what he's talking about. So we're going to back up a little bit. In verses 1 and 2 are just his greeting to the church. Verses 3 and 4, we're going to go back to where he says, by his, being God, by his divine power, God has given us everything we need for living a godly life. We have received all of this by what? By coming to know him. Get that. You have everything that you need to live the life that God has called you to live, not because of the own strength that you have in and of yourself, not because of qualifications that you can list out on a resume, but because you know him. Life change happens when things get personal with God, when you know him. We have received all of this by coming to know him, the one who called us to himself by means of his marvelous glory and excellence. And because of his glory and excellence, he has given us great and precious promises. These are the promises that enable you to share his divine nature and escape the world's corruption caused by human desires. So that is what Peter is saying in view of all of this. In view of the fact that we've been given everything that we need to live the life God's called us to live, by knowing him who called us to himself and gave us these promises so that we may escape the corruption of the world caused by human desires. That's our context. He said, in view of all of this, what do we do about it? He says, make every effort to respond to God's promises. I don't know about you, but when I heard that, I thought, I never really seen God's promises as something that I'm going to respond to. But that's exactly what our life is. What if you saw your day today as an opportunity to respond to the promises of God? And what are the promises of God? It says, in view of all this, make every effort to respond to God's promises. Well, if go back to verse 4 where we just were, he says, and because God's called us to himself, it says, and because of his glory and his excellence, he's given us great and precious promises. These are the promises that enable you to share his divine nature and escape the world's corruption. So he's referring back to that, but what are these promises? There's a cross-reference in 2 Corinthians 7:1 where Paul actually goes into what those promises are that we are being implored by Peter to respond to. So in 2 Corinthians verse 1 is where he refers to it, chapter 7, verse 1. But in 2 Corinthians 6:15 through 18, Paul goes into what these promises are. And it's the words of God. God says, I will live in them and walk among them. I will be their God and they will be my people. Therefore, come out from among unbelievers and separate yourselves from them, says the Lord. Don't touch their filthy things, and I will welcome you, and I will be your father, and you will be my sons and daughters, says the Lord Almighty. So what are the promises of God that Paul was talking about in 2 Corinthians? What are the promises that Peter is saying, respond to these? What are these promises that he's saying, they enable us to share in the divine nature of God, and they enable us to escape the corruption of this world? The promises are that we belong to God, is that God will live in us and walk among us. It's that he is our father, that we are his sons and his daughters. It's that we are welcomed by him. This is a big deal. What are these promises? It's the hope that we have through the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's that because Jesus, it's the love of Christ being perfectly displayed through Jesus Christ coming and dying for us, rising again. And in him, we have hope. In him, we are sealed in his spirit. In him, we are sons and daughters of God. God the Father welcomes us into his presence. We can boldly approach his throne of grace. And Peter is saying, look at these promises that we have in God through Jesus Christ. I urge you, make every effort to respond to them. And when I think about that, I'm like, that's what it means to live compelled by the love of Christ. When I'm living compelled by the love of Christ, I am responding to the love of Christ. I am responding to the promises of God by what Peter goes on to say. He gives us some practicality of how do you go about responding to the promises of God in your day to day, as you are washing the dishes, as you are walking on your campus, as you are going about your conversations with people, as you are in the unexpected and the hard, and as you are in the predictable and the really fun. As you go about your day today, Peter says, this is how you respond to the promises of God. He says, supplement your faith with a generous provision of moral excellence, and moral excellence with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control, and self-control with patient endurance, and patient endurance with godliness, and godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love for everyone. As you go about your day today, growing in knowledge of God, being kind to others, loving others, practicing self-control, patiently enduring in the truth, walking in moral excellence. In doing so, you are making every effort to respond to the promises of God. Because God's promises are worthy of our response. I love in Romans 12, where actually in Romans 11, Paul is talking all about how insane it is that Gentiles also get to receive the mercy of God. What a gift. And then he goes into Romans 12 and he says, in view of God's mercy, therefore, in view of God's mercy, offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God, for this is your true and proper worship. What is he saying there? In view of God's promises, in view of God's mercy, what respond? There's something wrong if we have experienced the mercy of God, if we know the love of God, and our life is not responding to him. We are not responding with brotherly affection and love and self-control and patient endurance and moral excellence. And as you go about your day today, I just want to challenge you to respond. And what encouragement too, though, I'm not saying go respond to the promises of God and moral excellence and love and self-control in the strength that you have. No, it all circles back to what Peter said just a few verses before. That you've been given by God's divine power everything that you need to respond to his promises. You've been given everything that you need to live the life that he's called you to live. By what? By knowing him. It's not for God's mercy that you respond to his promises. It's in view of it. It's not to earn the promises of God that you live compelled. It is in response to his promises that you live compelled by the love of Christ. There's this quote that I have been really thinking on so much over, honestly, the last few months. And as I was preparing our time together today, and I was just thinking about how we respond to the promises of God by choices we make all throughout our day. We live compelled by the love of Christ, and it's not just a one-time decision. It's in our mundane, everyday moments that we boldly live out our faith, that we respond to his promises. And A.W. Tozer wrote something that is honestly very convicting. It's very challenging, and I want us to just sit and grapple with it today. He said, "Millions call themselves by his name. It is true, and pay some token homage to him. But a simple test will show how little he is really honored among them. Let the average man be put to the proof on the question of who or what is above, and his true position will be exposed. Let him be forced to making a choice between God and money, between God and men, between God and personal ambition, God and self, God and human love. And God will take second place every time. Those other things will be exalted above. However the man may protest, the proof is in the choice he makes day after day throughout his life. The proof of our love for God, the proof of our walking in the promises of God, the proof of our closeness with God is displayed in the choices we make in our day to day, is portrayed in our response to his love and his promises in the day to day. So as you go about to do your day today, respond to the promises of God, knowing that in him, you've been given everything that you need to do so. I love you so much. Go live compelled.